Ready? Welcome to our 15th episode of Black Dance Stories. Here's a note about why we are here. Our dance world was pummeled by COVID 19, and Black dance artists are finding ways to talk about life during this time. Our world was further turned upside down after horrible events ensued nationally and globally, bringing attention yet again to the need for the Black Lives Matter movement. Dance artists have not been quiet. Black dance artists have been doing the work. Black dance artists continue to make work. To stay involved, we hold these weekly impromptu discussions and tell stories. Black dance stories. This is one action, and we promise that we will stay involved. We are a community working together to support, uphold, highlight, and celebrate Black creatives. Tonight is our 15th episode of what we hope will be many stories told in the artist's own voice. Thank you so much for making time to witness. But please help to spread the word about our special time together. I'm laughing, and we've been laughing a lot because tonight it's David Rousseve and Melanie Greene's turn, and they have been making us laugh. I can't wait. We can't wait to share them with you. Please meet part of our BDS team. I'll go first. I am Charmaine Warren. I am a Jamaican. I am the granddaughter of Ida Boyd, I am the great granddaughter of Ida Boyd, granddaughter of Solomon Goldson and Ruby Chapman, and one of 9 children by Theophilus Warren, my father, and my 94-year-old mother, Pearline Warren, who lives in Jamaica. I am a non-disabled Black woman with the utmost respect to the Native people. I acknowledge that I live on the stolen land of the indigenous Lenape people, now known as Montclair, New Jersey, with my husband, photographer and graphic artist, Tony Turner. Our daughter, Ashay Turner, a Black ballerina with locks, is going into her junior year at Boston Conservatory. I have locks that fall to my shoulders. I'm wearing a peach blouse and large geometric wooden earrings. Behind me are photos of our family, a large plant, a lamp, and African masks. Dance is my happy place, and each week I am honored to be able to share this special place with each of you. I am humbled that these fabulous notables, friends, downright good people from our dance community are also finding time to share with you. I turn it over to Kimani.
Thank you, Charmaine. And hello, everybody. Nice to be with you. So, the importance of acknowledging our familial and dance legacies is an essential tradition. With deep respect and honor, I want to acknowledge the Lenape people whose stolen land I am zooming from, currently known as the village of Harlem. I am a Black, non disabled woman, and I live with my 9-year-old son. I am sitting in my dining room. I have a golden low cut haircut, hairstyle with an orange top and big silver hoop earrings. I am the granddaughter of Lucille Madison. I teach because of her. I am daughter of Ronald Augustus Fowlin, Jamaican warrior, and Anne Fowlin, Renaissance woman. I dance because of them. My son Tamayo keeps me present with the fascination of a blossoming young visual artist. And with that, I turn it on to Nick.
Thank you, Kimani. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicholas Xavier Hall. I'm Haitian American. I identify as a Black, non disabled man. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am the grandson of Gertha Farr and John Claude Hall. I'm also the grandson of Jacques Arnaud Nicolas and Marie Violette Alexandre. I was born in Brooklyn to Sheila and Curtis Hall. My family, including my sisters Isabella Violet and Victoria Ashley, now live in Montclair, which is on the stolen land of the indigenous Lenape people. I'm also a recent graduate of the Fordham Ailey BFA program. I dance because it reminds me to keep dreaming. I'm in a white room wearing a white t-shirt and a brown corduroy button down. Behind me is a mirror, a TV, and a black figure Matisse painting. I'm going to pass things back to Kimani.
Thank you, Nick. So, as I always remind everybody, because we can't have this reminder enough, please vote. It's less than a month to go, and we need to vote, please. Also, the census, we need to fill it out. We must be counted. Please fill out your census. Okay. I also want to acknowledge the people, our family behind the scenes that make this happen. We have Cynthia Tate, who is our publicist, Gabe Decola-Danu, the web designer, Caitlin Chandler, the video expert, and Tony Turner, graphic designer, along with our ASL interpreters, Sharuk, Kenya, and Kira. So please, what is so important for us to continue this beautiful tradition is help from you all. Donations, if you can spare, please, please consider donating to us and to these amazing artists that we have. So with that, I will turn it back to Nick.
Thank you. So my first thing I want to share is that Black Dance Stories is very heavily community-based. So because of that, I want to ask everyone to say hi in the chat right now. Say hi to your neighbor, drop your name down there. We want to see who's there with us tonight. With that, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop a like, leave a comment. We want to know who's with us. Please follow our Instagram at Black Dance Stories. Follow our Twitter, which is not at Black Dance Stories, it's at BLK Dance Stories. And like us on Facebook as well. That's about everything from me. However, please don't forget to grab a glass of water, a cocktail, a glass of wine, whatever makes you happy. But let's cheers to Black Dance Stories.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.
Cheers. And with that, I want to take a serious moment, a pause and a breath. We won't allow you to keep your knee on our community's neck. Our BDS team will continue to stand in solidarity with all those who want an immediate end to systemic racism. Ongoing instances of police brutality prove the need for support from Black Dance Stories and the larger community. So please do your part. And with that, I will turn it over to Charmaine for tonight.
Thank you. Solidarity. Be here. Stay with us. Listen to the stories and find out what you can do. What is your action? So tonight, we're so happy to have David and Melanie. And Nick and Kimani will be back. But here comes David Rousseve. Bye, you two. See you in a little bit. Here comes David Rousseve. Hi, David.
Hi, Charmaine.
Cheers, baby.
Cheers with my kombucha, baby.
Kombucha. So, introduce yourself however you'd like. And I'm here.
Well, I'm Charmaine Warren's friend. And we work together. Charmaine was in my dance company. My name is David Rousseve, and I make interdisciplinary dance theater. And Charmaine Warren was in my company from 1988 until, our last piece at BAM was in 1996, and then we continued touring for a while. So Charmaine was in my company for over 20 years. But my name is David. I live in West Hollywood, California, which is in the largest city of Los Angeles. And I live on the land of the Tongva and the Chumash people. And I live in West Hollywood with my beautiful partner, who I love very much, named Stephen Rubenstein. And Stephen taught me only recently that love can always be found, and the best in life truly is still and always yet to come. You never know what's around the next corner, but it does get better and better. And I love you, Stephen. I'm the son of Roland Rousseve and Genevieve Rousseve, Genevieve Arsenault Rousseve. And my father's from New Orleans. My mother was born in Houston, but our whole family is from backwoods bayou country, Louisiana. And my mother is the daughter of Thelma Rainey Arsenault and John Arsenault. And my grandmother, who is a Creole woman, she's African, French, and Choctaw Indian, Native American. And she was kind of my guru in life, and taught me what life is about. And I think that the lessons that she taught me around purpose, compassion, and empathy still guide me now as I enter my 60th year as of last November the 21st. And yeah, at the beginning of my career, I made a series with Charmaine of about 10 full evening works about my grandmother, celebrating who she was and what she's about and the lessons that I, as a gay, I'm a queer man in West Hollywood. I use the pronouns he, him, his, a cis queer man. But my grandmother's stories of survival in the early 1900s Louisiana really informed not only my way of living, but the first 10 years of my career was built around telling her stories of survival and disenfranchisement, and then the search for hope in the face of that disenfranchisement. And I would say one thing that really set me on a course that I make interdisciplinary dance theater. The package that it's in is kind of Eurocentric, experimental, kind of German expressionism at its best or worst. But the culture and the stories are all around the African-American culture that I grew up in particular Southern African America. And the stories that I tell from my grandmother on down, not only African-Americans, but are almost always about disenfranchised people or oppressed people who are searching for hope when in fact they've been told that they have no right to find it. Yeah, so it's about humanizing the returning humanity from people who have been robbed of that humanity. It's kind of the core of my work. Hopefully there's a lot of humor in it, but I'm kind of a purpose-driven choreographer, and I feel like that's my mission in life, is to use the arts to create a human dialogue around folks who are not at the center of theater or dance works.
And what about now, David Rousseve? Inspiration for making work? How's that going for you these days?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a hard time. But where I am in my trajectory, I also teach at UCLA. My title there is Distinguished Professor in Choreography. I was also interim and acting dean for the School of the Art and Architecture, representing artists at the higher levels of leadership within academia. And I'm mentioning all of that because my creative cycle is that I make full evening works that take about, well, actually 3 to 5 years to develop. And then I tour them for a couple of years. And then I take a little break. I take a breather. And we just finished touring my last piece, Halfway to Dawn, which is about a piece about Billy Strayhorn, trying to capture the truth of the life of Billy Strayhorn, who was queer out in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. He was African-American jazz composer who was Duke Ellington's main collaborator, but because he chose to be queer and out, and guard his privacy, he was unknown to the larger public. So we just finished, even though he was credited as writing at least half, if not more, of the Strayhorn canon. And I mentioned that because we just finished touring Halfway to Dawn this past season. We were at BAM for the Next Wave Festival. Then we finished at Jacob's Pillow. We were supposed to go to Cuba this last April, but COVID had different ideas. But this is the time that I was gonna not so much take off, but let my mind and creative spirit rest. And then there have been so many overlapping horrors and crises. It's kind of the trifecta of what I see as the rise of the rise of our president, which and the possible fall of democracy, the Black Lives Matter movement, which unfortunately had to rise up because so many Black people were being slaughtered in the streets, and then not to mention COVID. And so in this time when I was taking time off, and I have two kind of large pieces that I'm going to be returning to, the plan was to let both percolate and see which one I was most interested in. But I think at a time of crisis, some things even supersede art and art making, meaning that just the horrors of turning on the news every night was so overwhelming that I found it really hard to find a quiet place to begin to create. And then, of course, not being able to go into the studio with dancers who I have so much respect for and who give so much of themselves, not being able to have the canvas of other bodies available to me was really devastating. But I have to say, it feels like slowly but surely I'm recognizing the utter importance of what we do, that the only solutions politically, artistically, and socially have to be creative at this point.
Yeah.
And it's the artists and those of us in humanities who are thinking creatively, and we're about taking risks and redefining and thinking of new ways to push forward. And so I'm starting to realize personal creativity, professional creativity is so important in this time. And I've been writing. One of the projects that I was going to work on is, because I'm also a filmmaker, I've made 4 short films. And
Name them.
Charmaine was in the first one.
Oh, right.
Urban Seeds, it was called Put Your Head to the Moon, Tales of Creole Women. And then I made a piece called Bittersweet. And then I made a piece called Chili Pepper. And then I made a piece called 2 Seconds After Laughter, a film called 2 Seconds After Laughter, which follows the life of an Indonesian dancer that I know and tries to capture what it's like to leave where you're from, end up in this new, strange, and odd place, and feeling emotionally and politically homeless while you look for your grounding. And so this latest project that I'm working on is a feature translation of my live piece, Stardust. Stardust was a coming of age story for a young gay African-American boy who tells his narrative only through a series of tweets and text messages. And so what has happened lately is that I thought, just force yourself to write, because I usually write a full-length script for all my pieces. And when I sat down to write, it was what I'm calling inspiration. It's more than that. It's everyone has to find their purpose in life. When you fall into that groove and you know, this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my existence. And telling the stories of these kind of forgotten and marginalized human beings. Once I started writing another story, everything just poured back in, almost like a pitcher refilling a glass. So it was finding inspiration, but more importantly, it was finding purpose, because it's hard in the time in which we live to live a life of purpose, dignity, and joy. And it felt like about 2 months ago, I returned to writing and being creative, and it felt like the glass was being refilled every time I would sit down to work. And I'm realizing as I look behind me, Charmaine's in that picture. It's the poster from our last piece that we did as a company, that company at the Next Wave Festival at the Brooklyn Academy of Music, Love Songs. Oh. And then Charmaine was in this piece with Michelle Ndego cello and me, and that was The Whispers of Angels. And then Charmaine was in that piece, which was, those are the posters for the pieces that culminated, the series that culminated at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. And there's a big old hole because this is how overwhelmed I've been. We just performed there last year, but I haven't had a chance to get the poster for Halfway to Dawn framed and put up on the wall.
Oh, David, do you remember when you were with the company last and you had to say, COVID, it's over for now?
Yeah.
Wow, that brought you way down.
It was a heartbreaker because a couple of things happened with Halfway to Dawn. Last September, we were going to have our final performance. I mean, we toured to, I think it was 12 or 13 cities, which in this day and age is just a huge tour. And we were all blessed and so happy. And then we were going to finish off at the Cranard Center, one of my favorite spaces in the world.
Oh.
And the week before the show, my mother crossed over and left the planet. So for the first time in my 35-year history, I wasn't able to perform, to be there for a company performance. She had been ill for a while with dementia, and it was her time to cross over. Still, it was heartbreaking, and I couldn't be there for the finish of this 5 years of work. And then we got this amazing gig in Cuba. A woman had seen us perform in Panama, and she loved the piece, and she said, "This piece should be shared with the Cuban people." And we were so excited. And we got a grant from USA Artists, a generous grant to go to Cuba. And that was going to be last May. Is just center of the performance year for me. And unfortunately, COVID had other ideas right up to the very end. We were still planning to go, but we couldn't make it happen. And so not only did the company, did we have to say, well, that's it for now, everybody. We also, there was no closure because Cuba was going to be the big celebratory finish of 5 years of work.
Are you still in touch? Are you talking regularly with them?
Yeah, I am. And in fact, the presenter from Cuba wants to do the piece again next year, wants to do the piece next year instead of this year. And if COVID allows us to travel, if everyone wears their masks, if everyone social distances, we'll be done with this. Anyway, that's my little plug. But so if we can travel, we're going to go to Cuba next year. And I'm also starting to talk to, or at least think about dancers for a new live piece, and then also for the film.
Mhm. I feel like we need to go back and talk about family a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
Because you mentioned your mama.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question.
She would always be on tour.
Oh my gosh. She would come with us on she would come with us on tour everywhere. But if y'all think I'm country, my mama is really country. So proudly, that's not a negative. But as Charmaine knows, she would be with us. She came with us to Rio, to France, to Paris, to Lyon.
And your father. And your father.
And my dad came. And my mom would cook a big old thing of gumbo, which is a Creole delicacy, seafood gumbo. She brought gumbo to France. She brought gumbo to Brazil because there was no security in those days, and they could care less. You could put whatever you wanted anywhere on the plane. So she would freeze it, and she would bring it. She would bring it with us. And I remember one time they brought some gumbo to New York. And my then partner, who's still a very good husband, who's still a very good friend of mine, Connor McTeague. Connor and I went to the Sheraton Hotel to pick up the gumbo in this ice chest. And I was already like, oh, Lord, we don't be walking for the Sheraton. And my dad had brought it in his cooler that he used for family picnics, 2 coolers. And one said Bud and one said Bud Light. So we were walking through the Sheraton with our Bud and Bud Light coolers.
But they were part of your show.
They were.
Really,
Yeah,
right?
They were part of my show in subject matter and also in life lessons. They're the ones who, for better or for worse, I would say I'm a purpose-driven choreographer. It's all about what do you want to do with your choreography? What do you want to do with your life? And for me, it's then what do I want to do with my choreography? What do I want it to say? What do I want it to bring into the world? And I got that from my parents, leading a purpose-driven life. In short, the Rousseves, which is my last name, my father's family is from New Orleans. And they were um, um, uh, stunning, they had a stunning level of education for Black people. Louisiana is the only state in the Union that had free people of color who could never be slaves. 5 generations before, my people were freed, and they used it to pursue education, and they pursued education. My grandfather had his master's. He wrote the definitive book on the Negro in Louisiana. The book was called History of the Negro in Louisiana. His brother had a PhD from MIT. Another one was the first registered architect of color in the state of Louisiana. But they didn't use their education to make money. They used it to better people, as in they gave their lives to the service of the civil rights movement, and as leaders in the New Orleans community of color and the NAACP. And then my mother's family just lived in abject poverty in Louisiana. And then she was raised in the projects of Houston, the Arsenault. And I grew up around the Arsenault and came to recognize the dignity that they brought to this incredibly challenging life. At Princeton, people would say, well, you're the first one in your family to go to Princeton. I'm like, I'm the first one in my mother's family. She was the first to go to college. She was actually the first to go to the first grade. So yeah, you could say I'm the first one to go to Princeton. But my point being that from the Rousseves and the Arsenaults, from the Rousseves, I developed a strong sense of that you have to give back socially, politically, and culturally. And from the Arsenaults, I learned why it's important to give back, because I thought my mother's family was treated like crap, socially and politically. And I wanted to make sure that didn't happen to anyone else. And all of those concerns are at the core of my choreography. And I think that purpose trumps form. It trumps whether you're a dance choreographer, a dance theater choreographer, or what. Purpose is what it's all about. And I definitely got that from my family.
You know, you talk about the performance landscape too, and what's out there. But you say, but whenever they're in town and we were on stage, it just changes everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I think that in particular for both of them though, they both crossed over, but they never, ever, ever missed a show. And not only in telling us, that was their way of saying we're proud and we love you, they would say it out loud, but the fact that they were so dedicated to following us across the globe. And this is meanwhile, when I graduated from Princeton and got into Columbia Law School and deferred from law school and let my mother and father know 3 years later I was gonna not go to law school, instead lead this life of poverty as an avant-garde choreographer, making really weird experimental work. At first they were like, oh Lord, where did we fail? But then they started coming to see the work and realized what we were trying to do with our art making. And again, hopefully the work is very funny, but it also is very purpose driven. And they came to appreciate the dancers and what the human body puts itself through, and they came to appreciate the issues and the languages that we were developing through choreography. So ultimately they became my biggest fans, which was such a shot in the arm.
And how much information they gave to the work also.
Yeah, that's for sure. Even my last piece, when I mentioned making a piece about Billy Strayhorn, who's this genius of a composer. He wrote the song Lush Life when he was in high school, which is one of the most sophisticated in terms of tonal composition and lyric songs ever written by an American artist. But he's a very sophisticated jazz composer. And, I was surrounded by jazz. It's my dad. My dad was a jazz saxophonist. He learned how to play in the French Quarter when he was growing up. And then he sued LSU, Louisiana State University, because it wouldn't admit him to be a graduate student to study jazz. So he sued the university and won and got his MFA in jazz. And then for the rest of my life was a jazz musician. So and the first form that I started in dancing was jazz. inspired by my father's legacy. So it continues how much our family and now ancestors continue to move us and be an intricate part of who we are.
How much of the writing that you're doing now involves them?
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. I think all of the writing is informed in tone by growing up in Third Ward, Houston. That's an innocent, that's an urban area in Houston. Was white, got gentrified really quickly, but it's a large African-American, very vibrant cultural center of Texas. And I think that the vibrancy of Motown 1960s still informs my work, if not literally, then in terms of tone and the kind of volume of my mother's Creole family. We were loud on Sundays. We'd have like 20 people in the kitchen. What I learned was that's how life is. And then when I started making work, the work was invested with those tones and feelings and shadings that I grew up with, as was the writing. Hopefully the writing is nuanced and accessible and well crafted, but it's also meant to be accessible and at a volume of Third Ward Houston.
Who are you talking to now more regularly from home?
Oh, that's a great question. Now I actually mostly talk to my sisters. I have a brother named Roland, and I have two sisters, one named Laura. And one
Wait, say the name again. Country, say the name again.
One sister is named Laura, Laura, and one is called Mary, Mary. And Roland Jr. is my brother's name. And I keep up with them primarily. My partner, Stephen, and I have been together for a year. We had our 1-year anniversary. And we had flights booked and paid for last March to go up to the East Coast. You know, I love New York. We were leaving in March to meet Stephen's mother and his sister, his mother, Trudy Rubenstein, and his sister, Joanne. And lo and behold, we were flying out on Saturday and COVID hit the fan on Wednesday. So we had to cancel those flights. And we keep dreaming about Stephen flying up to the East Coast. I met Stephen's son, Michael, here in Los Angeles, which I'm so grateful for, but not his mother and nor his beautiful sister. And we keep daydreaming about when it will be possible for Stephen and I to fly to Texas so that he can meet my family. But of course, COVID, as of now, has other ideas. Wear your mask and vote.
Wear your mask and vote. Do you miss New York, David? Really, really, really?
I do. There is the true answer to that question is New York is my favorite city on the planet, bar none. And I absolutely miss New York. I miss the vibrancy. I miss the people. I miss the type of people. But I don't know that I could live in New York at this moment in time. I feel like I'm old and frail. Keep up. But I have to say, one little anecdote. When I was single, and I was on every dating app you can possibly name, because that's how you find dates in this day. And every time, it's not like no one was interested in LA, but every time I would fly to New York, first of all, I'd be like, whoa, he's cute, he's cute, he's cute. And then I remember I was on a plane to Berlin with a stopover in New York, and I didn't realize that Match.com was on. And when I got to Berlin, I was like, oh my God, there were about 200 people in the 1 hour that I was in New York. And from New York. And what I realized was, this is how I feel about New York. I love New Yorkers. I think I have an East Coast aesthetic. And for whatever reasons, New Yorkers, I think I was a little bit more their taste as well. And I think it has to do with what I pointed out as my priorities. I miss that. I miss the East Coast sensibility. which hopefully still invested in my work.
Oh, we miss you. I miss you.
know.
We miss you. Melanie, come on in. What'd you say? Say that again.
Come visit me in California.
Well, you know how I feel about that. Come on in, New Yorker. Well, non-New Yorker, Melanie. But we had some shout outs. Speaking of New York, Amy Casello is here.
Oh.
Sandy Sawatka. Sandy from BAM. Raquel Monroe. Esther is here. Esther Vega Tapaga. Clarence Book. Kate Mattingly. Stony Darling. Dawn Robinson. Renee Redding Jones is here.
Oh.
And Cynthia Oliver says, happy anniversary. And she also says, or was that you? No, Country Indeed. I can't remember. I think that was you, Melanie. Country Indeed. So cheers, Melanie.
Jay said it was going to be a country episode.
Oh, all right. Jay Bowie is here. Hi, Jay. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Hi, Melanie.
What up, what up?
I'm going to leave y'all. And I think there might be a word that prompts your conversation. Country. Okay, bye.
Do I have to do my intro now? Yes.
No.
Melanie, I wanted to say, I'm so happy to meet you because I've never seen your work live, and I really look forward to it. I visited your website, and you had a couple of things there. I was like, wow, just in words. I love that you, in the first sentence of your bio, identify yourself as a curious being, because that's at the core of why I'm an artist. I just, for better and for worse, just insatiably curious. And I love that that's how the first thing you pointed out to is that you're on a path of curiosity. And you had a sentence there that I was like, whoa. I wrote it down if I can find it. You said, my work smells like delicious pomegranates and body sweat wrapped in fuzzy naked flesh. Whoa, lacy garment belts. Wow, that's so beautiful.
You know, David, it's really cool because I feel like there's so many mirrors between the two of us. You know, I'm from the South too originally, and I'm currently in New York. And my heart and my spirit is sort of being called to New Orleans. So
wow.
Yeah, it's beautifully serendipitous. And I was actually in the process of finalizing some stuff. And I feel like even hearing you and seeing you is sort of like a sign. Like I'm listening. I'm deeply.
Wow, that's amazing.
So
yeah. It was so funny because when I went to your website, I thought the same thing. I said, this work is so grounded in things that feel very familiar to me, and yet she's so adventurous. Like she's doing her own thing here. And to me, that's what it's all about. Like I thought she really is relentlessly curious and inventing her own way of saying the things that and exploring the things that she's curious about.
Yeah, and I feel like you gotta be, right? Like, you know, I don't think I was able to do that in North Carolina, which is why I moved to New York. And when I got here, I was like, oh, y'all doing all kinds of things. Y'all rolling in like egg yolk and body glitter over here. Like, I love it. So let me just open these doors and try to play with some different things. It just exploded. So in a beautiful way. So yeah.
Oh my God, I so hear you. We had the exact same experience. I was pre-law. I went to Princeton. I was pre-law, but I had never heard of Princeton. They sent me an application. I filled it out and went. But I saw on a map that it was next to New York, and that because I wanted to be a Broadway triple threat.
Ain't that?
I thought it's next to New York. I could do that. So when I graduated, I landed somehow in the downtown dance community.
Yeah.
And I literally thought to myself, this is what freedom is. You get to.
Yes, right? You're like, oh, here's my tribe, right?
Oh my gosh. And people doing what they want to do, improv, contact improv, working with a woman named Yoshiko Chuma and another woman named Stephanie Skura. I realized these people are just redefined. There are no rules.
Yeah, I love it.
Make them up.
That's what's up. I'm curious, have you been to Cuba before? You mentioned that got canceled.
I have not been to Cuba, and one way or another, we're hoping to go. I think that the director of the festival, she wrote just the other day to say, we were planning on April of next year, but who knows what shape COVID will be in April of 2021. But she literally said, God willing, we'll see each other in Cuba. So we're planning to go next year, but one way or another, I am going to Havana.
Yo, I've been 3 times, like
Oh,
studying.
wow.
Yeah, salsa and Afro-Cuban dance. This is where this little thing came from. Remember I showed y'all this earlier?
Yeah.
Came from. And also my rum. So I'm telling you, so many mirrors. Like I got so much life in Cuba.
When did you first go?
I feel like 2017, then went in 18 and 19.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And was it for work? Was it to absorb just what Cuba is?
It was like it was to work with salsa. So I went with the salsa group.
Oh, fantastic.
So like we were there for a week, and like part of the time you were in Santiago, and then you'd go to Havana or vice versa. It was with a group outside of San Francisco.
Wow.
So yeah, it was absolutely amazing. I can't wait to go back. Like I miss it. So yeah, it's just
it's harder at the last 3 years to go on your own. We were opening up there for a hot minute. And things got complicated.
But then it get there's a way that the media also will tell you is difficult. But then I actually asked friends like Maxine Montalis and other folks who had already been, and it was like they're like, yeah, you just get your visa at the airport and you go, and you just work because we're dancing, right? Like if you're there dancing, then that's part of our research, right? And like even with Afro-Cuban, what was beautiful is I started to discover like my family is very religious, and like my grandma was a shouter and she was a speaking in tongues kind of woman. And I saw an Afro-Cuban work, like especially with Obatala. I'm like, oh, my grandma used to shout like that.
Wow.
Like, oh, interesting. Like how the information translates and gets to different parts of the world. And yes, we still hold on to these African aesthetics and different.
Right. Yeah, that's really fascinating. That's what I thought. Charmaine and I performed at the Opera House in Rio, I mentioned, and then I went back a few years later to perform as a soloist in Bahia. And I was blown away. It was everything that people said it would be, and then some. And it was like you're saying about Cuba, it was so interesting to see the through lines of the diaspora and how in some places, Cuba, Bahia, they remain so present. They've been able to survive more so than in other places. Really interesting.
I have a friend actually right now who's stuck in Bahia. She went there in March, and then the jungle, and then obviously COVID happened. And she was saying when I brought up Cuba to her that she actually saw a lot of influences also in New Orleans that were felt Brazilian and Cuban.
Yeah. You've been to New Orleans, right?
Oh yeah, I was there for a month, like in July.
Wow.
Yeah, I ended up getting a car, and I was like, I'm not doing this COVID in New York. So I drove down to North Carolina and stayed for a while, got a car, and then drove back up to New York, drove down to New Orleans and stayed. Didn't want to leave, but knew I had to. And now I'm back in New York.
How was New Orleans in July?
I mean, I love the heat. I love to sit still and sweat.
I did
so
too,
I'm outside almost every day, but it's super quiet, obviously.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite cities, certainly American cities. We were there when I was a kid all the time because my father was born and raised there. He only left when he married my mother. They met at Xavier, which is a historically black Catholic college in New Orleans. His family has a long history there. So we were there in the bad old days of the French Quarter, which I loved. It was so gritty and amazing. I remember the jazz music playing.
Yeah, or getting caught in parades, like wedding parades.
Ah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah, I feel like especially Bourbon Street is so, it feels kind of empty. So you
yeah,
great.
yeah. Yeah, I was just there in February. It was the weekend before Mardi Gras with my partner, Stephen. And we went because I'd been saying New Orleans is like, you got to experience New Orleans. And I had some friends and family there that we could hang out with, but we just kind of packed our bags and went to New Orleans to explore the city. And my sister my sister Mary and all of her kids came, and her husband Tony. They came and met us in New Orleans, and that was just my niece Candy came. That was an amazing time. It offered up, New Orleans as party city, but also New Orleans as community. It feels like a very welcoming community-based city.
Yeah, I stay with a friend down in Central City there, and I'm
Huh?
like on the porch, and it's interesting because I'm really like sort of closed off in New York, but you can't sit on the porch and not speak to people in New Orleans,
Right,
and it feels right, which is interesting
right.
because in North Carolina I don't speak to folks either. I guess also because I'm in the country and it's not really, it's just different. Like when someone's speaking, you're like, what is it? What can I do?
Yeah,
But it didn't feel like that there, so I'm like, you know.
yeah. So did you go to North Carolina State? Because I know you're from Greensboro, right?
Yeah, I went to Carolina. I didn't go to state.
Okay, okay.
Yep, and then I went to grad school at UNC Greensboro.
Oh, how great.
Yeah,
And then you moved to New York right after that?
I did after grad school. I was like, so all my professors have been through New York, so it's like it's inevitable. You can't
Yeah,
not go through New York. Like you can't not be here and experience it and learn. So, and then
yeah.
my undergrad degree was in advertising and marketing, so I worked in an ad agency for a while.
Uh-huh.
And
Wow.
same thing. It was like New York. I was like, I'm not going to New York. And then after Dan's grad school, I was like, so you're going to New York?
Yeah.
So ended
Similar.
up, yeah.
And how you just those academic skills do come in handy. I paralegal part-time for a while before I started doing soap operas, like whatever pays the bill. I was working as an actor and a dancer, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to do commercial work or avant-garde dance. So I was kind of doing a little bit of both, but nothing like moving to New York and having to figure out in a hurry how to survive and also how to thrive.
Absolutely. I guess in another, I hate Mama Charmaine.
Hey,
I would love to later like hear more about like how you're seeing how we have to navigate, like our generation's having to navigate the city very differently. The way
Yeah,
our kids are looking is very different. Um, yeah.
to be
yeah, for sure.
continued.
To be continued.
To be continued.
Continue.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
And Olivia Taparga is here.
Yay.
And I have two things to tell both of you. One is Laura Marchese is here. She's from Montclair, my partner. Laura quoted you, David. She said, wear your mask and vote.
Yeah.
And Laura Marchese is my partner with Dance on the Lawn, the festival that I have here. But wear your mask and vote. Yes. And for both of you, Lucy Sexton says both of you are her heroes. Oh,
I love Lucy Sexton. I lived with Lucy Sexton for a while.
in the corner building
Yes, that loft.
on 14th, that weird
Yes.
place. Right.
Me, Lucy, Gail Tufts. It was who's in Berlin now as a cabaret star. It was amazing. I love
Bye, David. See you in a minute. And I know, to be continued. I know you have more to talk about.
Yeah.
See you in a minute, Dave.
Yeah, I work with Lucy and I've had the pleasure of dancing with Dance Noise. So yeah.
Yay. Introduce yourself. Hey, Melanie Greene. Cheers.
We done cheers 4 times. Okay, here we go.
Cheers. Introduce yourself. Welcome.
This room is tight. Okay. Hey y'all, I am Melanie Greene. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from North Carolina originally, currently zooming to you from the stolen Lenape land, also known as Brooklyn. I am the granddaughter of Mildred, Calling, McKeefers, and Olivelle, the daughter of Monica and Melvin. I did identify as a cis hetero woman, rolling in my single, but also manifesting an amazing lifetime partner. We'll see how that goes. I am a non-disabled Black woman wearing a flowy coral top. Underneath is a white top that is lusciously hugging my curves, as Mama Charmaine pointed out to me. I have tight curls that are flowing from the top of my head, cradled inside of a yellow headscarf. Thank you so much, Mama Charmaine, for inviting me here. And David, it's such a pleasure to get to know you. So, to begin this, when I knew that I was coming, I pulled a tarot card from my Osho Zen deck. And I heard about this deck from Adrienne Marie Brown. So shout out to her. I heard it on the podcast. And the card that I pulled is Understanding. And I'll just read what it says, which is the dawn of a new understanding, that the cage has always been open, that the sky has always been there for us to explore, can make us feel a little shaky at first. It's fine. It's natural to be shaky, but don't let it overshadow the opportunity to experience the lightheartedness and adventure on the offer, right there alongside the shakiness. Move with the sweetness and gentleness of this time. Feel the fluttering within, spread your wings and be free. So it is from there that I will pick some things to be curious to talk about. So as I sort of hinted to, mentioned, I am currently in Brooklyn. I have had the amazing pleasure of living in artist housing for almost 7 years. And I feel like I've learned a lot, I've performed a lot, and I'm continuing to think about what's next. And I have a friend who is extremely religious, and he said he uses God, I'm going to use universe, but I feel like the sentiment is the same. And it's that sometimes the universe whispers and you don't listen. And so then it has to yell. And for me, COVID was the yell. Because I won't say that I was like biding my time, but also I felt my heart being pulled in other directions. Because it's like the longer I was in New York, the more country I felt. It's like, can I just get some country ham? Where can I get a biscuit? Maybe a yeast roll? You know, it's just some, and also like really feeling my countryside and my city side too. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I just like jumped in a car, went down to North Carolina, stayed for a couple months, bought a car, drove back up to New York, drove 20 hours to New Orleans, stayed for a while. And as a lot of people who are there say, like, you know, people go and they fall in love there. Like there's something about the place and space. Also, interestingly, my dad, that was one of his favorite cities. He was a musician, which I can say more about later. And so I was feeling called, and it's scary as shit, you know? So I'm like, what are you doing? What do you want to do? What's next? What is your gut telling you? So this whole year, it's been really about a lot of deep listening. And there's like a lot of the logical stuff and the naysaying that flows through our heads, right? But then it's also thinking about like, what is your heart and what is your gut telling you? And what are all the signs telling you, right? So we shall see. I'm excited about this journey that I'm on and the next journey and how each sort of everything that I encounter will support and inform my artistic practice and my work. I guess to say a little bit about my history, I, again, grew up in North Carolina. So like my folks could not afford for me to go to dance classes. That was not a priority. It wasn't that they didn't appreciate it, just couldn't afford it. My mom also off and on spent a lot of time as a single mom because my parents were separated and we lived in different cities. So I didn't start taking dance classes until 9th grade when it was offered for free in high school. And before that, y'all, I used to fight. Like I used to fight my ass off. Like I was a fighter. I had an attitude, but I was also smart, like making straight A's and had attitude. So got into dance class, right? And found a way to sort of channel that energy. And then it got to a point where my dance teacher was like, so you can't bring that in here. And I was like, you know what? I hear that. And I mentioned this today in a dance union meeting of like, I'm gonna go over here and do these tandus, and I appreciate you checking me. And yeah, so I like hung out in the dance class for like 4 years. But before that, I would like host these like dinner shows that I would invite my mom to. They happened in the living room. My sister was always my cast. I had lines for her that she had to remember. We would rearrange the furniture. I remember I did like a Little Mermaid scene one time, and we like took all the liquids out of the refrigerator and we like made concoctions because I was a witch and my sister was a mermaid. And my mom would come home from work and we're like, here's your ticket. Your dinner is going to be this bologna and cheese sandwich. And please have a seat and your designated seat, which was a couch. And she played along beautifully, but then also was like, I'm not eating that sandwich. I plan to cook pork chops and I'm gonna fry that when y'all are done. Like, I'm not gonna eat these sandwiches, but I appreciate y'all for making them. And also, so she would love it, clap for us, and then be like, and please put all of my dishes back where you found them. So I appreciate her for that. And I'm also thinking about how I would, when she would leave, sometimes I would run into her room and take her. She had this beautiful green nightgown. It was emerald. And I would put it on and listen to Ella Fitzgerald records and like dance around the living room and imagine like being on Broadway, imagine being in New York and really investing in this like beautiful dance life. So, and then of course, try to like put everything back when I would hit the car in the driveway. So yeah, that's a little bit about the history of how I came to be here. A lot of things David said really, I felt a lot of mirrors and a lot of beautiful, like, yeah, I feel the same. And just understand like where our families are from and what they did. Like I came from a very religious family, which my grandmother was an evangelist and my grandfather was a preacher. My parent, like the church was so damn small. So I'm saying church and damn. It was so small that the whole choir was made up of my family. Like my mom's 4 sisters, and then my dad had 10 siblings. I mean, that was a choir. And then like they would, my uncle was on the bass, my dad was singing, I had another uncle on the piano. It was just crazy. Like that was their life. So me being in this secular life, I don't think was we couldn't even wiggle in church. Like we had Smucker's gum, like lipstick, like lip chat, and my grandma wouldn't even let us wear that because she was like, it's making your lips too red. You don't bring that in this church. Like super strict. Couldn't watch soap operas because it was the devil's work. Couldn't play cards. So yeah. So it's interesting. And I think even that very strict religiousness comes up in my current work, Sapphire, but I'm sort of like playing with it and turning on its head because like I'm realizing what I love and hold on to about that experience is the African aesthetics. It is the way in which like when you would hear them singing, it would just move through your entire body. And as a kid, my sister and I would actually sit on the back row in the men's choir next to my dad, just to sit with him. And so like just to be around that and just hear all of this was just like, that was really moving. And I remember always having a crush on the drummer. Now that they were not in my family, but always having a crush on the drummer, which we are slowly unlearning. Important. And yeah, so it's just, again, I just thank you for this like chance to sort of think about the story and how it sort of built and developed. And also David mentioning his mother made me think about my dad who passed a couple years ago. And actually the last time I saw him was in New York. He came to see me perform for Emerge NYC, which is an artist activist program. And he was so intrigued. He stayed the whole time for tech rehearsal, and he had retired at that point and was like, I think I'm gonna get into tech work. I think I wanna do lights. I'm like, Daddy, do it. And he like taught himself like how to play several instruments. So I've inherited his like keyboard, and we don't know what the bass because guitar is, but his guitar, his drums. So yeah, he really encouraged me to pursue my artistic career and took me to see Ailey. He was the one who was like, so is that gonna be you one day? I'm like, sure, why not? Because it was just amazing to see people who look like me on stage. And so he actually helped me move into this apartment. Like he was super, super supportive. And I'm really grateful for that. And even his passing felt very kind of epic because he actually was in church when it happened and he was singing a solo. And they said that he actually finished the solo, and then they feel like he had a brain aneurysm. So I'm like, well, damn, Daddy, you finished your solo. So, like, just, I'm feeling like if you go, I don't know what to say to that, y'all. He was super young, too. And I mean, 65 to me is super young. And, but just the way he decided to keep it moving and keep it pushing, I was like, well, damn. And that's how you do that. So I can't even be mad at that. Like, he was surrounded by people he loved. He was surrounded in a space that he spent his whole life. So yeah. And so I think about that, and I think about him. I feel like I feel him a lot. And so I talk to him periodically, you know, just, you know, even just thinking about the move and thinking about what my next steps are. I'm like, what would he be thinking? I'll also say too that after sort of that happened, I like sort of went beautifully wild and crazy. I started taking burlesque classes, Sapphire merged. She came up out of the, I'm like, we gonna do what we gonna do because life is super short. So that I went natural, like all this, like it was an awakening in a way. So that is a huge part of the story, I feel like, because I don't know that the Sapphire work would have ever manifested had it not been for this huge life altering moment for me. And yeah, and also I never thought that I would work on a piece this long, like David mentioned. And I loved hearing this idea of cycles, right? Like you work on a piece for 4 to 5 years, you tour it, and then you rest. Like that is a beautiful modeling. And I'm so grateful to have heard that because never thought I'd work on a piece this long. I've been working on Sapphire like 5 years, and there's so much I'm learning and so much I'm building for the work. And even right now, due to COVID and also because of COVID, I've really dived into the story portion of the work. And so I see it as a sort of a triptych. Like there's the performance component where she's breathing and she's living and she's performing and interacting. There's now the Sapphire Chronicles, which is a series of stories that she sort of goes through. So some of the imagery that you see actually in the performance, actually I sort of developed that in these fictional stories, which feels really exciting. And then I'm also thinking about this dance film. See how it just comes out randomly? Film that I'm calling Alien Seed Southern Clay. So it has to happen in the South, and there, and so that's another sort of, seed baby that I'm thinking about for this work that continues to excite me, keeps me motivated, keeps me moving forward in my purpose and figuring shit out. So that's what I got.
David mentioned purpose too, right? As in purpose in life and telling stories of marginalized human beings. And Sapphire is one of those people for you.
Mm-hmm.
But yes. I don't think everybody knows what Sapphire is. Who Sapphire is. Can you tell a little bit more about Sapphire?
You see, I just said Sapphire.
Yes. Country.
It's late in the day. I'm telling y'all, okay. I'm not gonna apologize. My country is in there. All right. So Sapphire is it's a performance character that I created. She is a golden goddess she's a time traveling golden goddess moving through moments that police and celebrate Black women's experiences and understanding our bodies. I say like she's humanity canvassed in an evolving constellation of identity, audacity, love. I'm actually now like getting into this ideas of pleasure because there's a lot of traumatic stuff and like oppression and shit that I'm like sifting through with that work. But I'm like, where's the pleasure? Where's the joy? And so that is now what I'm diving into for her too. So I also, like, again, moving to New York, I kept seeing a lot of nudity, particularly with white women. And I'm like, what's up? Like, what's going on in your world? I think that's how I started, connecting to Lucy Sexton. Like, what's up, y'all? Like, how are y'all doing this? What's this about? Especially being a woman from the South and be like, nothing about this is going on stage in the state of which I know the world to exist in that way. So like, let's talk about like the what, the why, the how. And Sapphire was a way for me to explore that. So I'm in all gold body paint, which is a whole process, which has expanded my ideas of ritual. It takes about 2 hours to get into that work. So, and I've had about 6 or 7 people who have been gracious enough to paint me, and it's a very intimate process. And so, even the ritual of getting into this persona has been life changing. And again, she just keeps talking to me, and Sapphire gets to say and do things that Melanie wouldn't for a variety of reasons. But interestingly, more and more, Melanie is being like, okay, well, we're going to do it without the gold paint. Let me tell you what. And that's been exciting. But I think at first I had to sort of tiptoe into it with Sapphire. Like she was my awakening. Yeah, because being in North Carolina, I was in predominantly white schools and white spaces, and the way in which my body was policed, what I told was correct, what I was told was incorrect, it was learned. Like the academic space really provided a very, I feel like, narrow idea of what art and art making could look like. And I didn't really fit inside of that, but I conformed because, again, we are celebrated for understanding white history and conforming in that way. And then when I got to New York and found my tribe of amazing Black artists, I was like, I can exist in the way I want. I can live outside of this box, but it took some undoing. So I spent a lot of time undoing that which was done, And so this is what that Sapphire work is too. It's like, yeah, my work is going to be sensorial. I want you to be able to feel, taste, touch, smell that bitch. Like, I want you to be able to have all of it. Like, and again, I respect and support those that want to keep things minimalist and separated. But my experience from, like what I said with my childhood, it was like there was food involved, there was textures involved. And I'm like, I want to bring that into the performance and my experience. So like, let's do that shit. So this is where I am. And so, I say, if you're listening, give us a chance. Because look, let me tell you what. People like Mama Charmaine and my other mentors, they understand it and they get it. Can't wait for y'all to catch up.
You said you're writing now, right?
Yeah.
Are there other characters? Do they have names?
Yes, there are other characters that are developing. Again, this is what I'm loving about being in my own artistic practice. If I'm in it, like I've had an opportunity to be in some amazing residencies. Like I had one in Bogliastico in Italy, one in Vermont, Mansi, what up? And in those spaces, I've been able to like really dive into the work. And as I'm writing, all of a sudden a character would be like, hey, what up? I'm like, oh. And so now we've got this character over here. So something that I thought was going to take a couple months is expanded like into a year. And again, they keep telling me stuff. And it's interesting too, because there's a character in my work called Stardust. But Stardust is a sort of elemental entity that shifts her story. So that's one thing I'm playing with the stories, is that the characters are the same, but their form will change. And so Stardust is sometimes Stardust is a weapon. Sometimes Stardust can be, I'm not going to give it away, but Stardust is a variety of things, and it morphs and shifts and changes. Sapphire is still Sapphire, but even her physical form changes to support the environment and story that she's in. So far I've developed 3 short stories.
Another character? You want to tell us another one?
There's a character named Zen.
And that's all you're going to say?
Yeah, I can tell you the titles of 3 stories.
Okay.
We have Airborne, spelled Heirbourne, which I will share a tiny snippet of tomorrow, actually.
Oh.
For another event. And then there's
tomorrow
at Gibney's Living Gallery with Eva Sentois at 7. Is that right? 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yeah. We have Metal Rain, Talreigen. Did I do that right? Metal Rain. And Podscape. So yeah, because also a writer. So like again, no need to segment these parts of my life. Like let them be informed. Like let them be in conversation with each other. Even like I crochet. So for Sapphire, I crochet part of the costumes. It's like let it all inform each other. It doesn't have to be separate things.
I forgot that you crochet.
Yeah.
And this huge, tell them about your crocheting,
Huh?
Sapphire. Tell them about your crocheting and how that feeds into your, as everything does, feeds into your art making.
To me, crocheting, again, it's very physical, and there's this beautiful rhythm of the doing, right? And so again, like I built a headpiece and also sort of a duster that she wears that, oh my gosh, I love working with materials so much because I've been playing with the duster. I'm like, oh, what if I expand it up around here and then dance with it here? Or sometimes it's over my head, sometimes it's dragging. It's just, it adds a lot of information into the making and the doing. So yeah, so there's some crochet elements in it.
Duster like,
Oh, it's like a long, it's a cover, but it's super long.
that's not right.
Yeah, I would get it, but it's sitting up there in a tub looking down at me. So,
But that's country. Duster.
duster. Yeah, I'm working on an elf hat right now, which I stopped and I started again. I can show you. Isn't she cute?
An elephant?
No, it's an elf hat. I can't wear them anymore because of my big hair, but you know, I just like making things, and then I see people. I'm like, would you like a hat? You know, that's how it goes.
How long does that take you?
It depends if I'm really in it. It's not that long. Like it takes me maybe an hour to do a hat. I did a baby blanket in a half a day. I love doing baby blankets. There's even a crocheting of a baby blanket at the end of Sapphire. A foreshadow? I don't know.
Did you talk about your mama at all?
My Meemaw. I'm calling her Meemaw now. Actually, I'm calling her Meemaw Paw Hall because just why not? My mom, she's a force. I come like my mom's family is very matrilineal. She has 4 sisters, and my grandmother was the only child, and her mom only had girls. It's a whole bunch of estrogen on that side of the family. So the men don't last long. But yeah, she was a nurse. She is happily retired now, and I love calling her every day to see how she's doing and what she's doing and making sure she's staying active. But yeah, she's beautifully cautious and on point. So yeah, she's the one who's like, so you're gonna learn how to change your own oil. You're gonna learn how to, you know, change your tires, or Melanie, you need to come in here and watch me cook this. And my response was always like, Mom, I'm gonna have a chef, so I don't need to know how to do that. And I'm still waiting on that chef. And that doesn't mean it's not gonna come, it's just not right now. So yeah, she's very prepared and very like, I don't know. And it's just different being in the South. And I think in middle schools when they they desegregated schools, so she's super careful and super cautious. She will not come see Sapphire for obvious reasons. Yeah, she's like, I do not want to see you butt naked. But I'm like, but I came from you butt naked. She's like, I don't care. I don't want to see that. And that is why I do the work, right? Like there's something about these like respectability politics, and then the way in which we sort of embody, and I get it, I understand it, and I have questions. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm old enough to ask those questions. I'm gonna stop there. I'm old enough.
Is it good to talk to her about Sapphire though?
God, yeah, I talk to her about it all the time. It's kind of like, my parents, again, they're pretty old school. So like, even like when I was on my dad's insurance and I was on birth control, he was like, I don't want to hear about it. I'm like, but you have to hear about it because we're going to change it and you're actually paying for it. So let's have this conversation. He's like, ugh. So I just have conversations with them that they don't want to have and let them be a tad uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Because it's fodder for stuff. It's stuff.
It's fodder, and it's like I want to be in a relationship with you as I am who I am. Like I would hate for 2 people to be in a room together and be like, wait, Melanie's what? Oh, Melanie's who? No, y'all know the same person. I don't want to be a different person for different people. And so that means, it's just like, here's like a personal, whatever, random conversation. Like I have this metal frame bed, and you know, as I'm in this process of thinking about moving, my mom is like, first she was completely against it, but now she's like, oh, we need to get this, we need to get this mountain, and da da da. And Melanie, actually, I want you to take this bed, your own bed frame, because I was gonna get rid of it because I'm, you know, I'm ready to get rid of it. And I'm like, well, Mom, you know, it's cumbersome and people's feet get caught. She's like, well, what kind of tall man you got in your bed and getting caught in the bed? I'm like, she's like, and I was like, well, Mom, I would at least like the option to have a tall man in the bed. So this is why I want to get rid of the frame. Like, I don't, but looks like I'm gonna keep it. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? It's just, she's like, TMI, Melanie. I'm like, I don't know why. You ask.
Come on back, David. TMI, Melanie. TMI. Come on back, Sam. Oh my gosh. Did you hear that? TMI.
I did. TMI. I
But
can't wait to
David,
see Sapphire.
which I know, but you talk to your mama about everything too, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and also she's a nurse. So from an early age, it was very like, here's what it is. These are the things. Let's be clear. These are your part. You know what I mean? There was just no beating around the bush.
Yeah, for us, I think it was also generational because my mother was, she was a child of the project, so she didn't have a lot of things available to her. And so when we were born, she decided they're gonna do everything I couldn't do. She's like she always wanted to be an actor, so I was in acting school at age 5. She always wanted to swim. She taught us how to swim, and you know I was the first one I went with on her first trip to Europe, and then she went to Africa by herself. And I mentioned that because then she saw that I was as scared of life as she is, but as audacious as she is. And so I think in some ways she thought, oh, he's doing what I dreamed of doing. And I think as products of our time, we were both frightened. What she taught me is don't let, you got to do, you can either sit at home or you can go out in the world scared and be as curious as you. That's why curiosity is my favorite word. She was like, do you want to go with me to a Muslim wedding in London? But this was in 81. I just read, I thought, of course I want to go with you to a Muslim wedding in London. And I was the only one in the family who was like, yes, let's go do this. And I got my little Eurail pass and she got hers. And so I think she saw, oh, he's as crazy and audacious as I am. But I couldn't do these things because I was born in the projects.
Yeah.
And I'm doing them now, and I'm going to let him do them earlier in his life.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Like my mom was super independent, and there's something about you can be scared, but you're gonna do it anyway. Like, or you can move through your fear, or move, and I think fear also is an important emotion to experience because it helps us be cautious and aware, but not to live and lead with fear, right? Like, so even when I went out of the country for the first time by myself to Paris, and you know, my mom was a little nervous about that, and she was like, I would love to go. I'm like, girl, go, let's go. And you know, we also know, like, she also equipped me with the tools. It's like, when you get on the train, remember your exits at any point, know what you can use as a weapon. To this day, y'all, she's just like, when I'm on the subway in New York, she's like, girl, carry around a hat pin. I was like, Mom, no one's carrying around a like, no, I'm not wearing a hat.
That is so country though.
She said, we just carry around a hat pin in case you have to, who's the you never know, right? So like, do it, but do it smartly.
There are more people here. Heather Robles is here and Janice Brenner is here.
Oh, hi everybody.
And Cynthia brought up the stories of your grandmother, how she loved them because they were so powerful. And so many people, both of you, are dropping bombs about dropping nice things, not bombs, about how fabulous your work have been. And Renee said, what did she say? I remember how you could seamlessly weave current events into our performances, always relevant.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Renee. Sweet, right? I love you, Renee.
Oh, I don't know, as I always say, that there are questions in this, not usually, because it's a whole bunch of our people here talking. But Jay said, yes. Oh, wait, I just lost the word out of my head that quickly. Burlesque. Yes, burlesque. And Amy said Whispers of Angels was the first performance she saw at BAM. So many greats. David, of course. Oh, then she mentioned my name and Larry Kegwin and Beverly Emmons. Wow,
Yeah,
Amy, you pulled up.
Yeah. She
Wow.
was amazing.
Okay, so y'all are country. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Biscuit, Cynthia. What'd you say, David?
We embrace it.
Embrace it, yes. Cynthia Oliver said, give me a biscuit. And I forget what you said about ham.
Country ham. Oh.
Country ham. Renee, who's, David, what was Renee Redding Jones's name?
Oh, her nickname was Country May.
Renee is from Virginia, right?
Yes, Country May.
Country. And Jay Bowie said, oh, this is going to be a country episode. See now? See now? And they talked about Lucy's Loft. David, can you explain it? Because of course Lucy said yes, she gave the address, but that corner. But Heather said
it was on Hudson Street in the meatpacking district. And what people don't know from New York these days, the meatpacking district was a meatpacking district, and there would be like carcasses hanging out from cows, and it was a real. But Lucy, so there's a corner building on Hudson and 14th.
14th, yeah.
And Lucy had this amazing loft, artist loft up there. And I lived there with Lucy in a spare room, and a woman named Gail Tufts lived there. Lori Eastside, who I love and adore, was up all the time. Dance Noise would rehearse there. It was amazing. And I had to laugh because when Melanie talked about getting to New York and seeing all those naked people on the stage, I'm looking at it, it's off camera, but I'm looking at a photo of myself naked as a jaybird at PS 122 in performance about 1988. And Donna Ann McAdams, who's a genius photographer, took the picture. They auctioned it during a fundraising thing. And I got the most beautiful note. This must have been about 2 years ago from Lucy Sexton, and a gift in the mail. Lucy bought the picture. She was moving and she sent it to me. And I hung it on my wall. So it's a gift from Lucy, and it's a reminder how going to New York and seeing like these people are doing whatever they want. And eventually I was like, I'm gonna do whatever I want. It's a spiritual image. I don't see angels wearing clothes, so I'm naked. Charmaine, you were in that piece.
I was in that piece. And David Farron, who was on last week, says, yes, Sapphire. Melanie is naked in that piece too, but she's painted gold.
Yes, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Janice Brenner, go ahead. You talk, Melanie.
No, I just have so many questions about, like, for instance, like BAM and the way y'all navigated BAM then and now. And I had another question just about nudity, but I lost it. Just like the difference in, like, I try to be so thoughtful about how my image is captured for Sapphire. And like Jay and I talk about this a lot on the Dance Union podcast of just like being really thoughtful about the way you protect your image, especially because things can just float all over the world.
Yeah, sure.
And then, you know, there's been so many instances where my images from like, you know, when I was at Nyla and other places where like it's used on catalogs and stuff later. And like, you're like, wait, what? Why is, and you like really have no say. So it's just like the digitalness of the capture now I feel like it changes the game so much. So I'm just wondering, like, David, like, what was it like to, like, you know, did you have any reservations about being nude and then being photographed? Like, I try to be so like, where are these photos going? Like, I'd be wanting to, like, not burn them, but like, archive.
It was really funny because I hated being nude on stage, and other people like Julie Tolentino, who I adore, who's an artist company. She's just such a powerful, to this day, gorgeous body-based artist. She was dying to be naked. She was like, every piece, like, can I be nude? Can I be nude? As a statement. And for me, I thought, you had best believe I really believe in the image if I'm up there with no pants on. It's got to be really important. Once we had a lynching and the African-American man was naked. And then it wasn't me, but then in this piece, I have to say it's really beautifully lit and there are shadows in all the right places.
Oh my gosh, you reminded me of Jay. Jay knows about shadows. They really do.
Yes, girl, work those shadows.
I need side lighting.
Yes. But we didn't, I thought the scene was about going to the core of one's being, to your soul. And I thought, well, you know, to sound a little bit pretentious, but I did think it's an audacious scene, and I have to be audacious enough to perform it and make it if I'm going to do it. So it felt like artistically it was necessary. And as Charmaine will say, we had a lot of challenges, though, in particular with the African American community.
That's what I'm talking about. See, and we only got 5 minutes. That's that, that right there. Because even now, I walk around my mama's house naked, and she's like, "Man, they put some clothes on." I'm like,
"Oh yeah,
why? Who cares?"
Yeah, well, especially I was so really just so interested in you talking about the ways that growing up in the church affects your work, and we had I don't consider my work religious, but certainly spiritual in the sense that it's about acknowledging something greater than yourself. And we always had secular but religious music. A woman from Sweet Honey in the Rock named religious sounding music named Ezai Barnwell, in a Sweet Honey way, wrote these gospel songs that were secular, but with a real jump up and shout gospel sound. And so you'd always have some folks there from church who were there for the music. And then it would be like, they are naked up there and he's gay? Oh my God, it was real, it could be really, but we had some major capital M challenges along the way. Because I felt like spirituality that's my own personal belief, and it's my terrain as much as anyone else's. So if you're offended by a spiritual dialogue, when that involves nudity, this is not your show. But yeah, it was controversial.
Melanie, did anybody ever walk out of your show?
I don't know. I was performing.
Well, and you never noticed? Or
No.
You just go in?
I go in. I did have had people go to sleep, and then those are the people I target.
Go, David. Follow that one. Those are the people you target, right, Dave?
Oh, we had quite a few people walk out. Remember, you talk about BAM, that was back in the days of the audience. We had a really loud Public Enemy in the first music, in the first piece. Look to BAM. And it was a joke. We were like, because BAM attracts a beautifully, I'm putting a really positive spin on a beautifully, wonderfully diverse audience. And we would see blue hair like me jump up. They were like, oh no, I'm out of here. As soon as that Public Enemy would come on, we would be like, I saw about 20 people get up and walk out tonight. And then we had a company in the UK that wouldn't work with us because we had too many queer people in the company. Do you remember that, Charmaine? I'm not going to.
I do, in the UK.
Yeah, and they were people of color, so it was really painful. They didn't want to partner with us. They didn't want to touch queer bodies. They didn't want to be around queer people. And at the last minute, they said, all right, we changed our mind. We'll work with you. And we said, no. I'm sorry. We don't want to work with you.
Right.
But, yeah, it was interesting in those days, but everybody's come a long way. And like you said, COVID has taught us all, do your thing, do what you need to do.
But I love that the young Melanie, not so young, but young Melanie said those are the people she targets. Wow. The young Melanie. Oh, look who's back. You know what that means, y'all.
It's time to go. All right.
Y'all are so country, though.
Yeah.
I ain't never been, but I'm guessing this is how it was. A little bit.
Wait, can we talk about the country today? Was that a topic today? I'm not sure. I think I might have missed it.
They have flown in every now and then.
Yeah, just in passing.
Wait, and both your fathers were musicians too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like certainly being an artist, people are like, where did you get that? Are there artists in your family? And it's my father. He was a jazz musician, and also going back to the Ellington music just last year and the polyrhythms and dancing to counts, and like we used to do way back in Third Ward, Houston, when I was studying jazz. I felt like that's in my blood, the rhythmic sense. It totally dwells within the DNA.
Yeah. And it's amazing how it's like a part of like your upbringing. Like I remember my dad, we would like drive from Charlotte to Greensboro, and an hour and 15 minutes, we'd only listen to one song.
Wow.
Dissecting every component of it,
Wow.
banging on the dashboard. We're like, Daddy. But now I appreciate it so much because like I love like putting on music and hearing all the intricacies in it and then embodying it. So really grateful for it.
I think this might be a great way to kind of wrap up. Janice Brenner says, Melanie, we don't know each other well, but just wanted to say your comic timing in storytelling is impeccable.
Impeccable.
Thanks.
And then Renee said, David, I will forever be grateful to your mother and your aunts for taking or what's his name, David? Jur country. His name is Jerry. Under their wings as they toured Paris. Oh.
Yeah.
Here's the last cheers. And to make sure, cheers, first cheers.
Cheers. Cheers to you, Charmaine. Cheers to
thank you. What did we leave anything out? Is there any last thing that you have to say? Melanie didn't really say, but tomorrow night, Gibney, tune in, live gallery. But
yes.
Say more, or David, say more. Say your whatever we missed.
Oh, Sapphire. I'll be doing a Sapphire Chronicles reading. So I encourage folks to bring their wine, light a candle, maybe take a bath before. Just whatever you want to do to get comfortable and let us like dive into this story.
Okay.
And I just want to leave everybody with what I said earlier: put on your mask and vote.
Ain't that the truth? And don't put it down here, like actually cover your mouth and your nose.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Next week, it's Olivier Tapaga, who's on tonight. Yay, Olivier. And Jasmine Hearn. Yay. So please come back. And like the good congressman said, go on, y'all. Get into some good trouble.
Amen.
Good trouble. Cheers, everybody. See you next week.
Powerful team. Beautiful team. I got to pour some more rum.
Come on, pour a little extra, Melanie.